This whole UFO alien disclosure thing is fascinating. Mainly the speed it's now happening at. And there's been loads of jokes around about 2020 being the year. The only thing that's missing so far, 2020 now, is an alien invasion. And it doesn't seem like that much of a joke. I mean, the US military, the CIA, everybody have disclosed so much information about flying saucers and, well, not flying saucers, but unidentified objects caught on military cameras and everything else. And they basically have all come to the conclusion that I came to years ago when I first looked at this, was that they don't know what they are either. It's really as simple as that. Now, during Cold War times, there was an imperative to try and control the narrative, because there was no way that the Soviets or the Americans could have their people believe that the other side had access to alien technology, and if anyone had access to alien technology, it was their side. And so you had a whole thing in America, pure lies and propaganda of Area 51 and Groom Lake and endless things about there's alien technology put in there, and this would be turbocharged into the narrative and into the consciousness by movies and things such as The X-Files, that have Americans believe that inside Area 51 was alien spaceman super technology. Now, this was all to create a sense of underlying subconscious reassurance with the population that that's what existed there. So ever since Sputnik, they've been terrified of Russians having more like space technology. Now, as this is all going on now, today you have like Trump with his space force, a new branch of the military, and there's so many comets and satellite things, comets and asteroids and things like that in the news of late. Like this comet Neowise, a very impressive comet, especially when it came out of nowhere, that we recently dealt with in the northern sky, in the northwestern sky. And it's all too tight, it's all too close together or something. And my enduring belief is that the alien UFO phenomena is itself a part of a folkloric thing, part of the fairy folk. It's the modern version of the fairy folklore thing, the modern version of the fairy lore, jinn, other races that live outside our perception in another space-time reality. And it's just the latest version of this. And what that truly is, it's hard to say. Is it a part of us? Is it another hostile consciousness? Is it truly alien, or is it a human in the future, or something like that? But I think that's to me is the best thing so far. The whole thing of nuts and bolts spaceships from other planets, nah, it's just I can't buy that. That's a very mechanistic, left-brained mentality, I think, in many ways, that it has to be a machine that brings them here. Now, and most people have had experiences with the UFO thing. A lot of them tell you it didn't feel like a machine. It felt like they were looking like an animal or a spiritual living thing. And that's what I want to talk about now, is the spiritual dimensions of this. It could be, well, Carl Jung in his first book on flying saucers pointed out that whenever there is crisis in the consciousness of humans, we tend to project our visions into the sky as flying lights and as, strange objects in the sky. And boy, we've been getting a lot of that lately. I saw one recently, it was a square, like it was a super black square in the sky, and it was behind it was something in the clouds moving. It's very strange. And the square almost looked like the abyss. But the fact that they opened up as a kind of a square parallelogram shape was very strange. There's this, the spiritual dimensions have always been kind of interesting. We know we have like, UFO cults, alien contactee cults, but they're very much still in the notion of the Space Brothers, like going back to Adamski. They're very much in the whole concept of the Space Brothers, and you even have it within Native American First Nations peoples. You have the whole thing of the Star Tribes, or the Star Nations thing is really big. That there's these are still a being. They're still an alien space being. They're not a supernatural being, and I would be more inclined to see them as a supernatural being. And then you look at these UFO cults, and then you look at something like Islam, right? And you look at the Hajj and them all circling around the Kaaba, the big square in Mecca, and that allegedly in there is a meteorite. It's where Muhammad is supposed to have ascended into heaven. So there's kind of a UFO-y element to that already. But I think if you look at that and you look at the Nation of Islam, which I know is not connected to Islam itself, the Nation of Islam is a UFO cult founded by Louis Farrakhan, and that's a huge part of that you don't hear about in the mainstream. But when I look at the Hajj, I think of I see humans, venerating something that looks very alien. There's something very alien about that experience. Now people say the black cubits, that's all nonsense. That was all made up stuff. There's no foundation of the whole black cubit Saturn thing. Nothing. That was just a completely modern, invented thing by conspiracy theorists. It has no historical lineage of any kind, folklore, mythological, religious or otherwise. But the rites, the rituals of the Hajj, it seems, and the way it seems, the way it's done to a cosmic calendar and everything. Now, as you know, Islam is growing and it's becoming more of a powerful religion in the world, and some of it has to do with the animal sacrifice. That's a huge part of it. That's the animal sacrifice is a major part of why things like Eid and these mass slaughters, that they're turbocharging whatever entity is behind Islam. And if this entity is not human, which I suspect is behind all the Abrahamic religions, is an entity, whether it's Yahweh in Judaism, Jehovah in Judeo-Christian, or Allah within Islam. I don't believe it's a human being, or I don't believe it's a human, a benevolent entity that has human interests at heart. And if you look at Orthodox Judaism, so much of it, the fact that they don't even mention the name, shows that they are probably the most clued in of all. That whatever was early Judaism, whatever was a Canaanite cult, whatever devoted to Al or Eid, and the veneration of pagan gods in the Canaanite world, it's almost like they were tricked into believing there was another thing called Yahweh, Adonai, and they jumped on that, and then they probably later on figured out that they were tricked, and they realized that there was this entity that hates humanity, basically, and a lot of Orthodox Judaism is to keep this entity at bay. That's incredible when you think about it. And if you look at Islam and you look at them circling around the Kaaba, and in the manner and the nature which they do, it's almost to keep this thing at bay. And the same thing with all the animal sacrifices. Do they sacrifice animals to this entity rather than to sacrifice human beings to it? And you see it even in Catholicism with the treatment of children. The little girls dressed as brides for God, the brides of Christ, when they make their first Holy Communion, when they're 9 or something. It's all very strange. The whole thing is, it's very different than the pagan concept of sacrifice. It's literally giving them away to this entity to these entities they worship. And if we are seeing what I'm starting to now believe is the development of a new religion, and a new major religion is, you wonder is why the Pope is so sexed up for Islam in this kind of thing, and what the elites want Islam as the religion, the new global religion, to replace Christianity because it has everything they need in it. But there's something more to it as well. They're not going to be able to sell Islam as it is now. They're going to have to kind of create a kind of the way Contactee cults have generally been Christian conceptual ideas. Like the thing was the Space Brothers coming back is just like Jesus coming back. The Judgment Day being taken, like the end of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, there's a kind of a rapture. He goes onto the space. Richard Dreyfuss goes onto the spaceship. There's a kind of a rapture. What they haven't tried yet is an Islamic star cult, and that could be something to look. We could be seeing the emergence of right now, an Islamic star cult that will have similar, the kind of Quranic ideas, the Mohammedan ideas, with a kind of a space lore dovetailed into it. Now, considering things like how animal sacrifice is so central to Islam, it is kind of worrying. I often you think of what happened to the Aztecs and things like that. The idea of blood sacrifice of a cosmic, you have cosmism, a cosmic religion that has a strong identity of blood sacrifice within an Abrahamic context seems very frightening to me. It reminds me of so much science fiction, particularly British, sort of the British nihilistic science fiction. Quatermass and the Pit, what they found underneath London in that spaceship was Martians, and the Martians had developed into two sects, SECTS, and these basically one butchered the other. And you look at the other Quatermass film, Robert Kneale, whatever you pronounce his name. I know I get slagged off for that, but I mean, I don't know. I didn't grow up with his name. Robert Kneale, whatever I'm going to call him. Or Kneale, whatever his first name is. He, in Quatermass and 3, you had this cult going around called the planet people. And they'd be chanting lay, lay, lay. And just like Muslims, they would be going to Hajjs at stone circles, and then they were harvested by the aliens. And there's a final one where like 100,000 plus of them go into Wembley Stadium in London, just like what you see in Mecca, and they're all in the stadium circling, and then the aliens harvest their life force, wherever the alien force is, it harvests them. And I'm starting to get a bit nervous now. You have a growing acceptance of the UFOs, alien stuff, etc., etc. The growth of Islam and the preference of Islam as the religion of the world by the establishment. And you dovetail the two of them together, and what you have is a massive star lore cosmic theology with an enormous propensity to sacrifice, the blood sacrifice. Now, this is something we have to keep an eye on in the years ahead. All the UFO cults to date, all of them, have been Christian orientated, basically Spaceship Jesus. All in the Solar Temple, the lot, all of them. There's no, the Raelians, there's none of them have deviated from this. Now I'm starting to wonder, when will the emergence of the first major Islamic star cult come about? This is something we need to watch big time, because the implications are not very pleasant when you think about it. Instead of waiting for the space Jesus to come, as we've had to date, what about the sacrifice for the space Allah? Watch this space.